Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. I hope you had a relaxing break and a good coffee. My name is Klaus Machatzer. I'm a traffic engineer with the Austrian Road Safety Board, the KfW. KfW is a long-standing member of the ETSC and also a proud member of the ETSC PIN panel. Today, I have the honor of chairing or moderating this panel debate, which is centered around urban road safety until 2030. And I have the great honor to introduce to you a great, as Antonio put it, lineup of speakers, of outstanding experts in the field. Right, let's hop right into introducing our speakers. Sarah Lynch is a policy officer at DG Move's road safety unit, and we already heard from Claire this morning that the Commission is very active in launching new legislative documents at the moment. We have seen the Urban Mobility Framework last year, and currently the Commission is working on the Driving License Directive revision and the Cross-Border License, Cross-Border Directive revision. So a lot to discuss about here. Welcome, Sarah, to this discussion. We have from Spain, Nelida Santos, who is mayor's advisor in the city of Bilbao. Bilbao is not only well known for its Guggenheim Museum and many other things, it's now also very well known for being the first city in the world to introduce a 30-kilometer speed limit without any exception. Welcome, Nelida, to this panel. Right, we have Chris Bruntlet, who is Marketing and Communication Manager of the Dutch Cycling Embassy. It's good that at least the two leading nations in cycling, Netherlands and Denmark, have founded embassies to get their ideas across to other countries. Welcome to the panel, Chris. Glad to have you. Well, I'm afraid to announce that we don't have today Lucy Saunders, Director of Healthy Streets based in the UK. She couldn't make it at short notice to this meeting because of health reasons. We will have, hopefully in a couple of seconds, Kieran Cuff, who is a member of the European Parliament and the Transport Committee. And last but certainly not least, we have Ellen Townsend, Policy Director of ETSC for, I think, more than 20 years already. And before that time, Ellen has been improving the planet in other institutions like the World Wildlife Fund. Great to have you, Ellen. Right, maybe some words of introduction. We all heard about the findings of the PIN report. And by the way, congratulations again to Lithuania, a really impressive list of road safety interventions that have been launched recently in the country. What we also learned is that we had a reduction of 31% over the last decade in road fatalities and 13% from 2019 to 21 alone. But certainly COVID had its impact on these figures. COVID obviously helped reducing gross fatality figures, but at the same time, obviously, individual risk partly increased because empty streets also led to it encouraged speeding at places. So what is more, the reductions over the last decade, the fatality reductions were lowest in the area of cyclists and pedestrians. And on top of that, during COVID, many people in many countries turned to walking and cycling more. And even on top of this, these skyrocketing prices for energy following the invasion of Ukraine, and a growing awareness of the climate change have probably also the consequence that walking and cycling can further increase. So how can we all handle this in a safe way? I think there are many reasons for this timely debate. I would suggest that we, without further ado, hop into the first questions. But before that, welcome Kieran Kaff, member of European Parliament. You're an architect and urban planner and an active member of the European Parliament's Transport Committee. It's very good to have you in this round.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you.
Yeah. Thank you. Chris, may I start with you? You represent a country, a role model country in cycling, so to say. What would your key messages to other countries be? How can cycling made popular? When I say cycling, I mean cycling on an everyday basis, using the bicycle as an everyday transport, sustainable transport mode. And may I suggest in your ideas to also include countries, maybe new member states predominantly, where partly cycling is in a very early stage of development. So this question goes to Chris Brundtlet first, if I may.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent question, and it interestingly, you know, the parallels to the Netherlands' own path to a cycling paradise go back to the 1970s in a similar set of circumstances, the oil crisis, the road safety crisis, that really served as an inflection point for them to take their mobility networks in a different direction. After a couple of very high-profile failed experiments in the 1970s, they came across the city of Delft, where I currently call home, and implemented an entire cycling network all in one go. And looking at the city as a whole, a minimum grid of origins and destinations, and making it possible to cycle from anywhere to everywhere. That is not just the trip from the house to the office, as is so often the case we focus on, but allowing children to cycle to school, allowing the cycling to the grocery store, to the restaurants, to community centers, friends' houses, public transportation facilities. And by making it possible, connecting all of those origins and destinations, they suddenly saw the number of people cycling skyrocket, as well as different types of people cycling, that is women, children, the elderly, and other demographics that you don't see on our streets now. And I think this serves as a very real lesson for us in 2022, because after COVID and during COVID, we were throwing down these pop-up bike lanes without giving much thought about where they connected, how they connected to each other, without any real plan on paper. And so the first thing we always do is stress when we're working with a new city is to start thinking at the network level. You of course have to start with a link, but you have to be thinking big picture if you want cycling to really take off in your city or region.
Okay, so network thinking and a crisis is always good as a start. Yeah, do I get this correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. May I move now to Spain, to Nelida? You know, to my knowledge, Bilbao was really the first town to put a 30 kilometers speed limit without any exceptions. You know, the whole road safety world has been looking at Bilbao, and we would be really interested in learning what the impact was, what the reactions were, was there opposition a lot, and of course, what your suggestions to other cities with similar ideas would be. Melida, I understand you have a PowerPoint presentation maybe to show.
Yeah, well, yes, I want to, yes, thank you very much for your question. Well, you of course, at the beginning, we have a lot of opposition, but what is the secret? Well, to make the decision with enough guarantees, we rely on three main points. The first one is our technical reports of the real average speed of the city, because before applying the speed limits, we did real test driving around the city, measuring times and taking into account the traffic lights and the zebra crossings. and we discovered that the real average speed of the city was 23 kilometers per hour. So to put a limit of 30 kilometers per hour, it was a normal, it was not to collapse the city. Then with this report, we gain a lot of security to make the decision. But after this, we make an intensive social awareness campaign. We supported and joined with medical, respiratory medical organizations and medical experts, because that help us to focus on the advantages of this measure for the health of all our citizens, especially the elders and the children. So with these two first steps, we think that it was not difficult to start with our sustainable and healthy mobility plan. And we make this plan in our area in the City Hall, and that plan was unanimously approved by the plenary session of the City Council. So all the parties on the city were approved all our plan. So with these three steps, we take the decision with a lot of security, with a lot of consensus in the city. And then we were able to put it inside. And we did it in two steps. And then I would like to show you, I'm going to share general, this one. Could you see it?
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. We did it. We pacify the traffic in our. Just a moment. I'm going to put it. Look. See. Now, much better. Yes, and we did it in two steps. First, on June 2018, we limit the speed in the 80% of the streets in the roads in Bilbao, because we limit the speed in the roads with one lane and one sense, but sorry, and one direction. And then two years after, on September 2020, we limit the speed to the entire city. So we were the first city in the world with more than 100,000 inhabitants applying this measure. And we try to sell this to our citizens like we live in Bilbao, we live 30 times before, because we have applied this measure in Bilbao. So I think that here is the secret of our mobility plan and the secret of the procedure to implement this measure. And if you want, I can also tell you a little bit about the results, but I don't know if you...
Absolutely, please come forward.
Yes? Well, after 1 year of this measure to put all the entire city, we have these results, because we have less accidents, 24% less accidents, and also less accidents with injured people, and less accidents with victims. So, and also we have improved the quality of our air, because we have less NO2 particles concentration. And also we have noticed in some roads, in some streets, that the people can open the window because they have no noise. The level of noise has decreased 1 or 2 decibels, and this is a lot of. So some people tell us that now, instead of live behind a highway, I live now in a street, in a normal street. Our citizens are appreciating this measure. So we are really proud of this.
Nelly, I think you can be really proud of this. And this slide shows that you have success across the board, not only in terms of crashes, but also in terms of providing healthy streets.
Yes, that was our point, to put the health in the middle of our decisions.
Mm-hmm. What about the acceptance? Do you know anything about the acceptance of the road users, especially passenger car drivers? Is that measure meanwhile accepted?
Well, it was the acceptance. Now 1 year before, the only complaint we have is the people who wants to the other users complains the law. There is people, because the people has noticed the calm of the traffic. For example, our bus drivers, they were afraid because they thought that maybe they couldn't fulfill the timetables of the lanes. And finally, they told us that now they drive with more calm and with less stress. Yes, it's really because they have avoided this measurement, this limit has avoided the fast and furious drivers. We don't have this type of drivers here now. And the drive in the city is more calm and more fluent. And also, sometimes we have complaints, the taxi drivers, oh, maybe with this limit, we are going to increase the tax rate of for our passengers, but finally is not, because we test the measure just before, and the median speed of the city was only 23, and now it remained the same, but the traffic now is more fluent and with less noise.
Congratulations, really, Nelly. This sounds like a dream, huh?
Well,
not only for the traffic safety specialist. Any immediate reactions from the panel? If that is not the case, I will move on. Nelly, you mentioned some sustainable urban mobility plans. I would like to move on to Sarah now, because the Commission has tabled a proposal under the reign of the TEN-T network that more than 400 EU cities that sit on the urban nodes, on the TEN-T urban nodes, should all come up with SOMs in the near future. And the Commission is also expected to provide a new recommendation or on a new SOM, on an updated SOM concept, as well as how member states can encourage their cities to come up with sustainable urban mobility plans. So the question would be, how can we make sure that the issue of safety is tackled in these sustainable urban mobility plans to a sufficient extent? How can we make sure that meaningful, effective road safety measures are included in those SOMs?
Good morning, and thank you for including me on this esteemed panel. On the SOMs, I think one of the issues that we experienced in the previous generation of SOMs was that it was a non-binding measure. So really the decision on whether to adopt one, the decision on the quality or the extent to which they were implemented was really up to the city authorities, which was natural enough because it was a new concept and it was something that we were exploring. Now we want to take it to the next level. So indeed, the proposal has been made to require all of the urban nodes along the TEN-T to implement a sustainable urban mobility plan. And from what we've seen in the discussions in the council, member states are okay with that. That there really is quite some acceptance of the concept that this would be a feature of the TEN-T urban nodes. And mobility and safe mobility has always been a strong feature of it. I mean, even in the previous generations, in the guidance that we had on the SUMPs, the need for safe urban mobility was already strongly placed. It was one of the 8 guiding principles in the SUMP guidance. And there were mentions of things like the cycling infrastructure, the wide footpaths, and the enforcement of speed limits. But there are some other elements that I would say also influence the safety, like on the low emission zones or on the central role that public transport plays. All of that, I would say, even if it's not speaking specifically about walking and cycling, it also has an impact on walking and cycling and on the general feeling of safety and security in our cities. So all of this is going to be taken into account when we are revising the guidance to member states, which is to come hopefully before the end of the year. And also our new expert group on urban mobility will be focusing on this issue, and I am nagging my colleagues quite insistently that safety has to be high up on the agenda. So it's good that I'm the person within the road safety team who feeds into the urban mobility team, and we have a very close working relationship, and we do ensure that the safety element is taken into account to the extent possible. But I think, like Nelida was saying about the health issue, you know, and like Claire was saying earlier about the energy saving issue, all of these things have to be brought together, and I think at the city level as well as at the national level, it's very helpful to have the councillors, the ministers, the authorities who are responsible for each of these interconnected areas to join forces to send the same message, that safe urban mobility is sustainable urban mobility, is healthier urban mobility, and that all of these things can work together, and that the having a shared line is always a more powerful weapon.
Thanks, Sarah. Sounds very promising indeed. Nelida, just in case, is there anything you would like to add? Maybe some recommendations to other cities when setting up SUMPs?
Yes, for other cities, two recommendations following the things Helen has told. For me, it's important that all the different levels of government, the national government, the European Parliament, and also the city, we work on the same line. This is very important. For example, here in the Basque Country, our government has is writing now a law for the sustainability in the transport, and the recommendation is that all the cities and all the different administrations has to build a sustainable mobility plan. Like we have done here in Bilbao, we have a special case, but the rest of the administration has to build one, and they have to do it in only 2 years, because we have a lot of experts and a lot of dates and examples to do it. So they are going to force all our area cities and different administration levels to do it. And also there is when we take the decision, one administration to take the decision has to choose between force or convince. And in my opinion, the first step is convince, and when you implement it, to help to implement the measures, and when you have implemented, then you can force to fulfill it. What I want to mean, I think that to convince is necessary to put the health in the middle of the system, to help the cities to make the different studies and different measurements to have enough information of the city and how this type of measurements and how the sustainable mobility plan is going to affect to the citizens and to who citizens are in the city. And then it's necessary to do it, do the application properly and give good examples that how has been functioning properly in another countries, and also to show them the expected results to convince. This is to convince. And of course, I think all the jobs that you are doing in the Parliament and here in the European Commission is really, really important. And also, there are another, we have seen that there are some other ways to convince people. And for example, we have this week, next week, we have participated in the broadcasting of a television series about road safety with the Irish public television, and it's going to be next Monday on the air. So in this series, we are going to show a little bit of our experience here in Bilbao, and I hope that this could be could give some ideas to other cities here in Ireland or maybe in Europe.
Thank you, Nelly. The more I learn about Bilbao, the more I think you will turn into a role model for the whole of Europe.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's stay with 30 kilometers or 20 miles. Maybe a question to Kieran. We heard about this Repowering Europe strategy. We also heard about this EU Save Energy communication, and that mentions explicitly reductions of speed limits along the whole network. So it mentions motorways, but it also explicitly mentions urban speed limits. So the lowering of speed limits in urban areas. So we see now 30 kilometers in one way or the other popping up here or there. What could EU do to encourage speeding up that process?
Well, I think it was very encouraging to see a very direct statement on 30K coming from the European Commission. I think we've been waiting for a strong message from them on speeding. I think we were all disappointed that we don't have a stronger message coming from the European Commission. But this response to the Ukrainian crisis has been heartening, and it links into what the International Energy Agency also said, that we need to encourage walking and cycling. We need to tackle lower speed limits, not just as an energy saving initiative, but as a road safety improvement, but a livability improvement as well. So it's not just about looking through the lens of health and accidents, or through the accidents metric. It's also about human health and happiness. If we create cities where people can hear each other talk, where they can let go the hand of a child, where they feel safe, where their family feels safe. But I think we would like to see a stronger message coming from the European Commission. The urban mobility framework is encouraging, but there are still things we'd like to go further with there. The centrality of the car in our urban areas, that needs to be challenged. And also, while we welcome the move to electrification, it's no use if we simply replace 100 cars, petrol cars, with 100 electric cars. We all know this, but we have to get the modal shift, in our urban areas. And that requires a concerted effort to look at every mode and encourage the more positive modes and discourage those that do harm in our urban areas. But I think there's never been a better time. I think the COVID pandemic showed us what we can do within a matter of months. I think the tragedy of Ukraine is also making us think again about energy savings, and never let a crisis go to waste, as Ram Emanuel said. And I think we have to use this crisis to rethink our cities and towns. Just finally, on a personal note, I mean, I've brought my children up in Dublin's inner city. I've cycled with them to school. I've walked through the streets, and the difference that lower speed limits make, the difference that segregated cycle lanes make, it's palpable, it's profound, and it absolutely changes our lived experience. And we need to just use every measure we can to move this and accelerate this where we can and when we can.
Thanks, Kieran. And in many places, safety and environmentalism go together very well, don't they? Ellen, maybe you want to chip in here?
Yeah, yes, please. No, I just wanted to say that we very much welcome the EU Save communication, the recommendation to public authorities to introduce lower speeds on the motorways and in urban areas. So this is great, but we're still calling for a fully fledged recommendation from the European Commission on how to achieve that, to help the different levels of government deliver that. Specifically, of course, we're as Kieran, looking forward to some of the safety benefits that Nelly so beautifully outlined in her introduction there about Bilbao. We are also going to be writing to transport ministers to ask them how they intend to implement these recommendations. But yeah, so from ETSC's point of view, very, very pleased to see this. Even if we didn't get kilometers per hour, we didn't get much detail. Well, we're clear what we would like, which is maximum motorway speeds of 120 per hour, 80 for rural roads and 30 in urban areas where we have residential areas and pedestrians and cyclists. But it's a very welcome new initiative. And yeah, as I said, we can see some of the benefits that are coming. Bilbao is not alone. We have Paris and Brussels alongside, and then others are also introducing more 30K zones, different areas. Oslo and Helsinki managed to have 0 pedestrian and cyclist deaths in 2019, and part of that was also their efforts to introduce lower speed management, but also with the support of infrastructure measures as well. So not to forget that, yeah, once you've got the 30K legal limit, you need to work really hard to convince, as Nelly said, but then also to implement with the support of infrastructure and enforcement. Yeah.
Right. By the way, to complete your list, we just heard about Wales an hour ago. Yeah, and you just mentioned enforcement, Ellen. Enforcement of 30K. One of the last, if not the latest, ETSC pin flash was on enforcement. Are European towns doing enough in enforcement of speed limits? What could be done more?
I think we definitely need to be doing more. One of the other recent ETSC reports showing that the level of compliance with speed limits in urban areas, it's between 35%, which is not bad, but should be 0. I mean, full compliance, up to 70. So 35% to 75% of drivers are not complying with the legal speed limits in urban areas. Our last report published on enforcement was obviously focusing on how enforcement can help, but I would actually say that here it's infrastructure has to be the starting point, and we need to look at the different functions of the roads and then set the speed limits accordingly. And if not, they need to change the infrastructure. So self-explaining roads, sometimes they're called, or forgiving roads. And then also treat the high-risk sites. This was very nicely presented this morning by the Lithuanian State Secretary and also the intersections. So I think Lithuania also said that they did an audit of all their pedestrian crossings. That was also one of the contributing factors to their recent reductions. So that's also very, very good. So no, for sure, urban areas need to be doing more to enforce the 30K limits. And to explain why. So Nelly, you were also mentioning this in your introductory speech there. So using facts and figures, I know Brussels has done a lot. Each Brussels citizen got a letter, including one of these facts about the increased risk of an unprotected road user surviving a crash at 50 compared with 30. So I think using those facts and figures can be helpful. But then, yes, you need to follow up then with cameras if necessary. So the so-called education by enforcement, and also not to forget our new in-vehicle safety technology intelligent speed assistance, which is coming in now, mandated through the general safety regulation for new vehicles from this summer. We would also appeal to cities to invest in signage to enable that technology to work its magic. So if it were fitted to all cars on the road, I mean, of course, we're going to have the being introduced as people buy new cars, it could cut deaths by 20%. But we need the cities also to keep the signage, or introduce the signage if it's not there, for this to get the maximum benefit. So yeah, maybe just to summarize, enforcement is just one aspect. We need to invest in infrastructure that will explain the speed limit that is set. We need to do the campaigns to explain also to the citizens, and enforcement is one of the last steps. But unfortunately, sometimes it's the only tool that some drivers will understand when the ticket arrives through the letterbox. Yeah.
Thanks, Ellen, for describing the whole package of measures that are required. May I now swiftly turn to children's safety? And this question goes maybe to Chris and Kieran. We have seen deteriorating trends, worsening mobility trends when it comes to children mobility. Children are, by large, taken to school in passenger cars. Playing does not anymore take place physically outside, but on electronic instruments indoors. And that leads to, fragility. Children get more injury prone by having no physical exercise. Anything we can do to reverse this trend? Personally, my view is, as an everyday cyclist, I see that around here in Austria, here in Vienna, children seem to be cycling much less than we used to do as children. Do you see the same phenomenon, Chris?
Most definitely, yeah. And unfortunately, the Dutch have characterized this as the Achterbankgeneratie, the backseat generation of children that will unfortunately experience the world around them from the backseat of their parents' car. They'll be shuttled from A to B, unable to take risks, unable to be exposed to children outside their socioeconomic bubble, and obviously leading to very unhappy and unhealthy lives. But I would say the Netherlands does better than a lot of countries. 2/3 of all children here still walk or cycle to school. And it comes down to the infrastructure, it comes down to the traffic calming, it comes down to the fact that they've kept the car at a distance from the school. If you drop off your kids by bike here at the front door, no problem, in and out. If you're dropping off by car, the car drop-off area may be a few hundred meters away, with an understanding that you are, by your very presence, discouraging other children or parents to get from A to B safely. So I think just like the road safety crisis here in the Netherlands in the 1970s sparked change, the political movement that arose out of that was called Stop the Kindermoord, Stop the Child Murder, because of the growing number of children that were not just unsafe, but losing the space on the street to play and walk and cycle. we need to use this as with a new narrative. If involve children in the planning process, so ask them what they want from their cities. We can't just talk to the people that have the time to come out to the community hearings and have the influence and power to talk to their elected officials. We have to ask all the residents of our city, and that starts with the people who for the first 18 years of their lives do not have a driver's license and really benefit from having a free and autonomous way to get from A to B.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Chris. Kieran?
Yeah, certainly we have to ensure that children's voices are heard in the debate about how we make transport and mobility safer, but how we make it easier for children to find their way from A to B and back again. We know that children's independent spatial mobility has reduced dramatically in the space of 2 generations. The backseat generation, it's aptly termed. So we need the infrastructure, but we also need the messaging and the metrics. So the infrastructure, I think we understand. The wider footpaths, the safe crossings, the segregated cycle lanes. But then we need the messaging. And I think often there is good intentions, but the wrong message. In my own country, the Road Safety Authority has done great work, but they do place a strong emphasis on high-vis clothing for vulnerable road users. And in a sense, that's victim blaming. It's pushing the onus on the cyclist or the pedestrian to protect themselves. And there needs to be much more focus on the car driver to slow down, to drive at an appropriate speed. And I also then think that the metrics have to be clear. Yes, the child safety metrics are pretty good in my own country, but an awful lot of children simply aren't allowed outside. Or if they are driven. So let's look at the indicators that we use. And an indicator I would use is whether a parent can let a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old outside to play by themselves on the street or in the garden or walk to the park or walk to the school. So I think we need to think about our messaging. We need to think about our metrics. And it is with the best will in the world, but quite often our policing authorities and indeed our safety authorities are looking at the wrong metrics and perhaps getting the messaging wrong. One of my heroes, Mayor Hillman, 30 years ago, he brought a focus on a UK message on pedestrian safety called One False Move. And obviously it was telling pedestrians to be afraid and to be very careful. And we needed to put the emphasis actually on the driver. So we need to get the messaging right. We need to get the metrics, the indicators right. And if we do that, I think we can do great things. And I think some countries around Europe are doing amazing things in terms of messaging.
Thanks, Kieran. So I take from this infrastructure, messaging, indicators, and a bit of legislative nudging when talking of school streets that are at least temporarily banned for passenger cars.
Yeah.
Where it's a bit easier to use sustainable modes when taking kids to school. Thanks a lot. May I stay with you, Kieran? You are at the moment drafting, the European Parliament Transport Committee is drafting an own initiative report on urban safety or urban mobility. Well, I'm not directly asking you for a sneak preview, but what do you think is the EU currently doing right, and what is still missing?
Well, look, I think having indicators, having these 19 sustainable urban mobility indicators, that's really good. Looking at modal split, looking at road deaths and injuries, we could quibble over the detail, but it's good. We've heard of SUMPs, but the move towards sustainable urban logistics plans, or SULPs, I think is important. We talk a lot about the last mile logistics, the last mile deliveries, a big push to moving away from the white van towards the cargo bike and hand delivery. I think that is really important. I think we need guidance on quality infrastructure for vulnerable road users. we see that will be there. And then, of course, the explosion of micro-mobility. Matthew Baldwin, formerly of this parish in the Commission, Matthew was very good when he said that, look, we have to make our cities safe for micro-mobility rather than micro-mobility safe for our cities. And I thought that was a good point. Recently, I saw a e-scooter advertised, and apparently if you traveled on the footpath, it would slow to a stop. And if you drove erratically on the street, weaving left from one side to another, it would slow down and stop. And I only wish that technology would apply to SUVs as well as to micro-mobility devices. But I'm starting to rant here. But I think we need, within the urban mobility framework, we need to see a link between SUMPs and funding instruments. So between Horizon Europe, between Connecting Europe, just joining up these great measures, these great funding devices at European level, and making sure that they don't contradict each other and that they work in harmony. And then, of course, working with other groups like the Global Covenant of Mayors, and with the new 100 Smart and Carbon Neutral Cities mission. They just had a meeting here in Brussels 2 days ago. That's a very exciting initiative, because traditionally the EU, the Commission, we all tend to focus on the member state and not on the cities. But urban areas are the coalface for a lot of the actions that we need to take. So I think an urban mobility framework is a really good step in the right direction. Just one last point. We're seeing a lot of transport and demand, a lot of new systems, delivery systems, the gig economy, and precarious employment with food delivery firms. And we all have seen people on e-bikes going as fast as they can to make more money, to build on the rather low wages that they get. So I think we cannot look at urban mobility without looking at this challenge of precarious employment and drivers simply trying to fit in more appointments and more assignments. That can be a white van, a white delivery truck, or it can be a immigrant on an e-bike. And I think we have to think about these issues, because we can see the evidence piling up that if you're in a hurry, you will see more incidents and crashes taking place. So we have to address that with fair working practices.
Very good point. Thanks a lot, Kieran, for that. Ellen, you may want to chip in on this point.
Just 2 points really. I mean, going back to what Sarah was saying earlier in her first introduction, Kieran, our appeal to you as one of the draftspeople for the urban report is to support very strongly this Commission proposal in the 10T regulation to introduce mandatory SUMPs for all the urban nodes. I think this will really bring us quite a long way. There was an evaluation of the SUMPs that were done as part of the preparation for this, and 83% of the SUMPs had already included road safety measures. So I think we can sort of say SUMPs are good for road safety, and we can see some of the cities here. Brussels brought in 30K as part of their SUMP, the Good Move plan, and what Nelly was saying also contributes to that. And then the second thing on the gig economy, really interesting also that you mentioned this. ETSC very much supports what was included in the Commission's proposal, that we should take the default of an employee being an employee of an employer who has to then take the responsibility, also including the road safety responsibility of looking after their staff. So exactly the opposite of what you were saying. I mean, in terms of making sure that they are not racing to deliver and being paid per drop off, because most of them, as you mentioned, are independents.
If I may come in on that, also the Commission's recent proposal on the platform economy apart from the moving people from a contractor model to an employee model, there's also some provision in there about the algorithm that governs the system, that the algorithm should not be in a position to influence the safety or negatively influence the safety of the person performing the task. It was quite difficult to reach a good wording that would cover the entire platform economy, because not all of it is in the delivery mode, but that was the best that we could come up with. So I do hope that wording will succeed in the course of the negotiations on that particular proposal also.
Thanks, Sarah, for that input. May I stay with you, Sarah, now that your microphone is on? Infrastructure. The topic of infrastructure has been mentioned several times today already. We heard earlier today that 70% of all urban fatalities are vulnerable road users. And as a traffic engineer, I noticed that a lot of this is due to lousy infrastructure or non-existent infrastructure for cyclists and pedestrians. So my question would be, what could be done to provide adequate and safe infrastructure at a larger scale? And maybe how could we help cities to access financial resources, EU funds?
Yes, well, clearly a lot of money has to be thrown at it. That's one element of the solution. But there's also the element of the capacity building. From what we hear as feedback from a lot of local authorities, city authorities, is that their staff just don't know how to structure a fundable project from, say, the European Investment Bank, who has quite some resources to provide funding for urban infrastructure. So the Jaspers platform, or in the context of the climate neutral cities that Kieran referred to before, the advisory services that are being provided through these platforms, I think they are going to be invaluable to help local authorities to access the funds that are applicable, to structure their projects in such a way that they become fundable, and to design it in the way that makes it that the funding will be directed at the most effective level. There's other work underway, as Claire was mentioning earlier, on the implementation of the Road Infrastructure Safety Management Directive. That there are pilot projects going on at the moment on how to do the network-wide assessments that will also have an impact on how the engineering and the infrastructure authorities are going to assess where do they need to put their money, where do they need to make their biggest investments. And we'll be getting the results of those hopefully in the early autumn. So there are many sources of funding available. The recovery and resilience funds that are currently being dispersed, the regional development funds, the cohesion funds, there are plenty of sources, and I think it's a question of allying the sources of funding to the expertise and the capacity building that is needed to get it to the right direction. The other thing I would say about infrastructure is about testing and trying and seeing what works. And I think the COVID experience has been interesting in that regard, that there were some of the temporary infrastructure that popped up has proven its worth and then has been able to be made permanent in a large number of places. I understand Chris's point that they were sometimes just on a major artery or on a very busy street that you suddenly had an extra lane given to cyclists, and that doesn't solve all of the problems. But I think it does point to the intentions. I think it's the network approach is an interesting one, and it's useful to see what's happening, say, in Milan at the moment, where the entire city is being planned as a cycling network. But I think on a smaller scale, there is a lot to be said for trying, testing, learning what works, and then implementing it on a more permanent basis.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. So it needs capacity building both on the traffic engineering side and on the tapping of resources side.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anything that Nelly or Chris want to fill in here immediately? If that's Nelly?
I fully agree with Sarah. I think that the cities we have the ability to reach the last citizen and we know how to implement it, but we need help in the way Sarah has told us. We need help to follow with the technicians to follow which are the best practice, and also we need help to find the funding. Because we have a lot of projects, but we don't have too much technical people, and the fundings are always really important. Yes.
Thanks, Nelly. Time is fleeting. I just realized we have another 4 minutes, and I have a final question. My final question for all of you, which we probably could talk the rest of the afternoon about. But 4 minutes only. E-microscooters have been skyrocketing, both in numbers, both private and hired ones, and also the figures in hospitals, the hospitalized riders of e-microscooters have skyrocketed. So what should be done? What should be done now at the European level? I mean, should we encourage this, first and last mile stuff, or should we restrain? I just heard from Oslo, nighttime ban on microscooter riding. The question goes to all of you. Who's first? Nelly.
Well, okay. In Bilbao, we have cleared the idea. We don't like the scooters because the reports of our experts told us that it's not a healthy way of transport, because nobody leaves the car and gets one scooter. Normally, the people is walking and then take first walking and then take a scooter. And also, when we speak with the surgeons, with the medical surgeons, they recommend that the helmet must to be required, because they see so many damage on the face of the people, and we don't like this for our citizens. And also for us, it's very important that the sidewalks are only for pedestrians, only, exclusively for pedestrians, and the only vehicle that can circulate it on the sidewalks are the wheelchairs for disabled people, but no scooters. The scooters has to be with helmet, and not a normal helmet like the cycle. Our expert recommends like the full helmet, like the same, like the motor, like the motors, the same one. But in this situation, it's very difficult to convince the people to use the scooter with this helmet. And we think that we are not going to try to impulse the use of the scooter in our city. We don't like the scooters because we see these very big problems.
Thanks, Nelly. Some other panelists to respond. Sarah?
If I may, yeah, I can't say that I'm able to take a position of for or against, because I think the streets should be for people rather than for a specific type of vehicle or device. So I think the genie is out of the bottle, and we're not going to do away with e-scooters altogether anymore. I think they just are a feature of our landscape now. The point is to make them safe for the users themselves and for other road users. So along with the urban mobility framework that we published in December, there was a SUMP topic guide on safe use of micromobility, which is guidance to city authorities on how to integrate them if they're being integrated into the city mobility mix, how to do that safely. My colleagues in the vehicles unit in DG Grow are also planning to work on the safety of the devices themselves. So that's work that will be starting very soon. There'll be a workshop on that in September. So it is definitely a challenge, but I think our main challenge is to strike a balance between not, like Nelly said, the rights of other road users shouldn't be under threat by one road user, and I think that is valid across the board.
Thank you. Ellen, your microphone is open.
Yeah, thank you. So we also worked on some guidance and certainly support the road safety recommendations included in there. And we also recently polled our members from across the EU, and we have an overview of the regulatory framework in the different countries. But very specifically, well, we're very much looking forward to this the legislation that you mentioned, Sarah, which is under early preparation from DG Grow on the vehicle safety. We would very much like to see a top speed plus geofencing for lower speeds in different areas. For example, that could really work. Yeah, certainly a ban on by the minute rental, and then maximum power, minimum age, helmets. Ban on multi-person, no alcohol or drugs. So yes, we would welcome more restrictions for the e-scooters. Yeah, that's the bottom line.
So the ETSC blueprint is available.
Yeah, I mean, Ellen, I agree with all you're suggesting, but I just would humbly request that we apply it to large cars in urban areas as well. Geofencing, top speed, alcohol, drugs. I don't think we can look at micro-mobility without looking at the explosion of the size of cars in our urban areas and the real dangers that they pose to other users. So yes, let's regulate the speeds. Let's make sure that they don't park on footpaths. Let's make sure that they're not driven under the influence of alcohol or drugs. But let's apply this to both cars and scooters.
Thanks a lot, Kieran. I'm taking this couple of minutes more. I hope you all apologize. Chris.
I have to leave you at this point. I'm so sorry.
Thanks for your contributions, Kieran. Last question goes to Chris. Electric micro scooters are usually, in many countries, they are treated as bicycles legally. Any reactions from you?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about the Netherlands is kick scooters, electric scooters are actually banned nationally at this moment in time. One of the few countries where the national government intervened early to regulate them. So it's illegal to sell one, it's illegal to buy one, it's illegal to ride one. But they will be introduced, it looks like, in the next year or two on a very, and now that the government's collected data from other cities and kind of put together a plan of action about how they will be introduced, they are going to do so. But I think more than any other country in the world, the Netherlands is well placed to take on this influx of new vehicles, because the diversity of cycles using the cycle path, and I use that word very deliberately, it's not just two-wheeled cycles anymore, it's tricycles, hand cycles, cargo freight bicycles, obviously electric bicycles. So it comes down to the width of the infrastructure, and the national guidelines just raised the minimum width of a cycle path to 2.3 meters here for a one-way cycle path. So that's 4.6 meters for a bidirectional lane, with the understanding that there's a congestion on the cycle path and increasing demand and pressure from different types of devices that go different speeds and have different masses. And if we are to share that space safely, allowing people to ride side by side as they should in a social manner, allowing people to overtake each other comfortably, to allow one of these devices to share space with a 5 or 6-year-old child, it comes down to taking that space away from cars and giving the proper space to the other road users. And I think that's a lesson for everywhere. The problems with scooters have come from the fact that we're so scared to take space away from the cars, parked cars or moving cars. And so as a result, the kick scooters are racing on the footpath and causing conflict with pedestrians. and then they're parked on the curb, cluttering up the footpath. And all we need to do is to, well, I say all we need to do is if that's the easy thing to do. But we need politicians that are going to lead on this and actually allocate road space in a much more fair and equitable way, because right now the private car takes up the vast majority of our right-of-ways, and everybody else is left fighting for scraps.
Thanks, Chris. I think that was a perfect conclusion of this discussion. We have had a great discussion, and we have this discussion has shown that a lot has been achieved. A lot is still to be done. Even if EU roads are the safest in the world, still there is a lot to be done. We have many examples. We had Netherlands, network approach in the Netherlands. We had fantastic Bilbao, becoming role model of Europe. We had mention of new EU legislation by large, but we know that only large-scale implementation will make the real difference. I think we all dream of a model system that prioritizes those who are most vulnerable and, by chance, also the most sustainable: pedestrians and cyclists, public transport. So we are all dreaming of a priority pyramid that is standing on its top. And there's still a long way to go, but I have the feeling that Europe is on a great way there. I would like to thank all the panelists for your valuable contributions. I would like to thank the audience for bearing with us a couple of minutes more. Thanks for listening. I would like to thank the ETSC for organizing this conference and generally for making a real difference in European road safety work. By the way, talking about ETSC, the next ETSC Pin Flash will be launched in September. When school starts, it is on children's safety, and many of the issues that we discussed today will be covered in that Pin Flash as well. So I wish you all, you the panelists and you the audience, a great summer with close to zero emails, vision zero for emails. And I herewith have the honor to close both the panel debate and this conference. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.